So hello, Facebook. Hello, YouTube. We will begin in about a minute. We'll start with our theme music to open us up. I'll let people in from the Zoom side. We're fighting against two big things here in Pittsburgh, Ray. Beautiful weather. I mean, it is like what, 75 degrees out or something like that. And the Steelers are playing at 425. so so it's an uphill. We're working against the wind right here, but we'll make it work. All right, I'm going to start letting people in, and I'm going to start the theme music. Here we go. Man, Mary Goss, you still have the moves. Wow, was it great seeing you dance? Oh, it's terrific. Welcome, everybody, to Greatest Generation Live. I am Todd DiPastino, and this is the Veterans Breakfast Club. And this is one of our 3 live programs that we have every week. We get veterans together to share stories. And on Greatest Generation Live, it's on World War II stories and veterans from World War II. Again, my name is Todd DiPastino, and I'm the director of the Veterans Breakfast Club. And we're fighting, we're a nonprofit based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And that is relevant today, right now, for 2 reasons. Number one, it is an absolutely beautiful day outside, like 75 degrees. Shame on all of you for being inside. You're doing it outside. You all be outside and enjoying this beautiful November afternoon. And the second thing against us today is that the Pittsburgh Steelers play the Dallas Cowboys at 4:25, I think kickoff is. So I think we're going to lose the Steeler crowd. They'll have to watch it on Facebook or on YouTube later. But we'll have a nice cozy group here on the Zoom side. And then we'll also be simulcasting on Facebook Live. So if anybody wants to send in comments, I will relay them from the Facebook side. Again, I am going solo again today. Sean and Ellie trust me, flying this ship alone. And well, they actually don't, but I insisted that I do it myself. So, but we have a really neat lineup today. We have Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Goncharov, who is beaming to us from Moscow. It is where it is midnight, correct, Alexander?
Yes. 3 minutes after midnight.
3 minutes after midnight. Thank you for staying up late and joining us. He is a retired Army colonel, Russian Army colonel. Also was in the Navy, I learned. And
actually, I studied in the naval aviation.
Yes, that's right. You were in the aviation wing of the Black Sea Fleet when you were drafted into the Navy, I read. Fascinating, but we have him here because he's the head of a project and the founder of a project called The Last Soldier of World War II. We'll talk to him about that. We have Ray Kaskey here. Ray was the principal artist for the National World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. There was an architect who kind of laid out the big picture, and Ray came in and filled in so many of the architectural, sculptural details, including the wonderful 24 bas-relief bronze panels that I think are the best part of the memorial. I told him that and he scoffed at me, but I do think they are as engaging as any public kind of commemoration I've ever seen. And he's kindly agreed to kind of join us from Washington, D.C. and walk through some of those 24 panels with us to say what inspired him to come up with the panels and what they signify. And I could also add that Ray is a native of Pittsburgh, and you could tell by the way he talks.
Oh,
I noticed.
that's right.
I noticed it right away, Ray. So it warmed my heart. So I think we should be proud that we have Ray Kaskey as a native Pittsburgher, graduate of Carnegie Tech, now Carnegie Mellon University, and a world-renowned sculptor. And he's with us here. And then finally, we have the great Warren Goss joining us from Pittsburgh. Hello, Warren. I saw Mary dancing to that swing. Your wife, Mary. Wow, does she still move? Holy
Hey, you ought to see her dancing in the kitchen when she's cooking.
she dances when she cooks.
With the refrigerator door.
I got to tell you know, I should tell everybody that we were at a Veterans Breakfast Club event, and my wife loves to dance, and I'm a bad dancer. And she danced. My wife Warren was there, and she danced a bit with Warren, and she came back to me and wagged her finger in my face, said, "Why can't you dance like that?" So, I'm always trying to live up to. Here we go. Oh, good. We have Donna Goss joining us. We have Herb Schaefer joining us. Hey,
Good.
you know, I have a couple things going on with the Veterans Breakfast Club coming up, and I don't want to, you know, load you up with all these announcements, but I do want to say two things are coming up right away. So I want to about them. Number one is tomorrow we have our usual Monday night happy hour, and but it's going to be a little bit different tomorrow night because we're doing an event in conjunction with the University of Pittsburgh at Greensburg campus. And we are going to screen a 1 hour, 45-minute documentary called Vietnam in HD. It's a History Channel documentary. It's the first hour that focuses on the years 1964 and 1965. It'll be at this Zoom link, and we'll watch it for 45 minutes, and then we'll regroup at 7 p.m. and have a conversation with some of our Vietnam veterans who will be there and comment about what we just watched. And we're also going to continue the celebration of the 245th birthday of the United States Marine Corps. We did this last Monday, a week ago on November 2nd, early. I know that we're doing it early because the Marine Corps birthday is November 10th on Tuesday. And we probably had 20 or 25 Marines in the room, and we only got to maybe 8 or 9 of them. So I asked if they would come back and share some stories about their service in the Marine Corps, and that'll be tomorrow night at 7. So there will be Vietnam in HD at 6, and then we will have our usual happy hour at 7, and it'll be on this Zoom link. And then on Wednesday is Veterans Day, of course, November 11th, and you'll remember, those of you who are familiar with the Veterans Breakfast Club here in Pittsburgh, we always have a very large Veterans Day breakfast at Duquesne University. You know, 750, 800 people, keynote speaker. It's always a wonderful event. We have our World War II veterans share stories afterwards. This year, of course, we can't do the big breakfast at Duquesne University. So we're doing a virtual event, and you could sign up for it. You could register for it at virtualveteransdaypgh.org. That's virtualveteransdaypgh.org. It'll be a Zoom webinar event. We will have the presentation of colors. We'll have the national anthem. We will have a wonderful keynote speaker, Lamont Gourdine, who recently joined the Veterans Breakfast Club Board of Directors. He's a retired 25-year naval aviator and a graduate of the Naval Academy. He'll be speaking. And so we'll have a nice ceremony that will be over probably about 8:45. It'll start at 8 a.m. The ceremony will be over at 8:45. And then we're going to bring on 3 special World War II veterans to share some stories. One is with us tonight, Julia Parsons, the Navy Wave. We'll also have Roland Glenn, infantry commander in World War II, and we'll have Larry Kirby, Iwo Jima Marine veteran. So if you could join us on Veterans Day at 8 a.m., please do so. You could connect to it through our website, veteransbreakfastclub.org, or you could just go straight to virtualveteransdaypgh.org. A lot of other things.
I'd like to go there.
Yeah, go there. I have a lot of other announcements, but I'm not going to bore you with them because they're a little too far off. So I'd like to jump in because I know we have a busy program today, and I'd just like to introduce our Lieutenant Colonel Goncharov. Colonel.
Yes, Todd.
Privet.
Привет. Hello. Hello, everybody.
Hello. I know that is that's not quite the proper word. I probably should have used the more formal greeting, but I practiced it. Can you say what the more formal greeting is?
It's okay. Привет. It's maybe very common among teenagers.
Okay.
Among close friends.
Yes, close.
As you do actually veterans business, I consider yourself and your team as my close friends, as brothers in arms.
Oh, that's so nice of you. Yeah, there was a more formal greeting I should have used because I don't know Alexander. I haven't met him yet. And I practiced it, but it was so, I could not do it. And I just didn't want to embarrass myself. I could manage with privet, which is the more informal slang greeting. So thank you for joining us, Colonel. I thought first, can we talk a little bit about your service? You were drafted in the Navy. You're about my age, and you were drafted in what, 1989 or
I
so?
was drafted in 83 at the age 18 years old. Actually, on the next day when I turned 18, I was drafted.
Oh,
So
cool.
this was the custom in the Soviet time. Every
Wish you could
boy
turn that up.
was entitled to go to defend our country. So I was drafted to the Navy, was selected to join air arms of the Black Sea Fleet, was trained as a torpedo mechanic, and just briefly, after 2 years of national service, I decided it's good service, and I volunteered to join the officers corps, applied for Defense Academy, and after officers training became an officer. Just briefly.
Yes, you became an officer in the Army. Why did you move from the Navy to the Army? Was that your choice, or was that choice made for you?
The problem that I've chosen the universal type of service. Military translators corps, which is shared by all three services: Army, Navy, and Air Force. So I started my national service in the Navy. Then after the Defense Academy of Languages, I was posted to Army, Air Force, and eventually ended up in the Army.
And you became a specialist, an advisor, a linguist in the Middle East. I mean, so
yes,
you have actually, I should let people know, you have a PhD, and your area of specialty is Middle Eastern warfare, contemporary Middle Eastern warfare since 1980, especially in Iraq.
Yes, I focused on defense policy of Iraqi President Saddam Hussein during his reign.
Right.
From 1979 till the year 2003, when he was removed from the power.
Right.
Probably it was one of the biggest mistakes of your foreign policy, I think.
Oh, here we go. Okay, I knew we were going to get it. I thought we might get into some foreign policy debates, and I'm really, I'm fascinated by this because you and I are about the same age. And, when we were growing up, of course, there was the Cold War still going on, and we would not have been able to talk like this. It would have been impossible for the two of us to have had this kind of a conversation. And I just think it's so neat that we are now able to have these conversations. And I thought I would have you talk a little bit about this fascinating project you have called the Last Soldier of World War II project, where you honor Russian veterans of World War II, but also British and Norwegian veterans of World War II. And it's almost like an exchange where the Russian veterans go to Britain and the British veterans come to Russia. What got you involved in this?
Yes, after my retirement, I was given a job at the British Embassy, Moscow Defense Section, and I was given the project bilateral military cooperation program to supervise it. And one of additional tasks which I was involved, it's some honorable duties like hosting veterans, inviting them to different embassy functions like Remembrance Sunday, Armed Forces Day, Her Majesty birthday party, and stuff like that. So in May 2005, we hosted huge, really huge British veterans delegation, amounted like 50 men and women, those who served during the Second World War in northern seas, in Arctic, delivering military materials to Russia using Russian northern ports like Murmansk and Arkhangelsk. And by the way, the Royal Navy and Merchant Navy lost 3,500 men during this sea lift operation. And actually, it was one of the three possible routes during the war to deliver war materials to Russia. South Road through Persia and Caspian Sea, Pacific Road from Alaska to Russian Far East, and from England, Scotland to North Russia. By the way, this northern road was the most efficient and quickest road. It took only 10, 12 days to get it done, while other roads were more relaxed in terms of time and not so efficient, especially if you look at Pacific Road. We had huge ocean and 8 time zones from Vladivostok. It's our main harbor on Pacific to Moscow, 8 time zones. Imagine 9,500 kilometers to get supply delivered, either by rail or by air. So the land of wilderness, forest, lakes, rivers. If you lost your aircraft, you eventually destined to die in this wilderness. And during this airlift operation, Russian Air Force lost 150 airmen during those years from 42 till 45, mainly because of air crashes.
I'm sharing, excuse me, Alexander, I'm sharing the website for your project, the Last Soldier in World War II website, just in case people want to go on it. I put the link in the Zoom side. I will do it in the Facebook Live side. And I just find it so interesting. You have so much information here. You have wonderful photographs about, like this one I had shared before. You have, photo albums of some British veterans and Norwegian veterans. When I was growing up, and I think when many of the people here were growing up, we certainly read about World War II in our history books and were taught it. But we generally, because of the Cold War, we generally weren't taught about the Soviet participation, or weren't taught in depth about the depth of the Soviet sacrifice in World War II. I've heard that it was the same thing in the Soviet side, that often in Soviet schools, you didn't hear much about the American participation in World War II. I know that there's more and more now, since the end of the Cold War, Americans are learning much, much more about the Soviet, supreme sacrifice. 25 million killed, dead in World War II. I mean, it's unimaginable, the loss, the suffering that Soviets and Russia did in World War II. And I know that, like, people like, Warren Goss here, who fought in Europe in World War II, I know that Americans would often talk to each other, hoping that the Russians would get to Berlin first, because then the war would be over. The Soviets were were squeezing the Germans from the east, and the Americans and British and French were squeezing from the west. And the quicker each side got there, the quicker the end of the casualties. What did you know about kind of the American-Soviet relationship in World War II when you were growing up?
Just some statistics. For us, the Second World War started on 22nd of June 1941, when Germany invaded the USSR. And because it was the whole plan designed to have a blitz war, to launching three main blows, north, center, and south, to occupy main European regions. And the aim was to finish campaign within 4 or 5 months, actually before the winter. But facing the severe resistance, Germans slowed down, and actually German tanks were fully stopped only 20 miles away from Kremlin. Imagine how tragic it was. Leningrad, the second main city, nowadays known as St. Petersburg, was fully encircled, and the siege of Leningrad started on 8th September 1941. It lasted 875 days. During the siege, and especially during the first severe winter, many civilians lost their lives because of lack of food or lack of electricity or some basic needs. Right. And in total, citizens of Leningrad lost more than 1.5 million during these 3 years of siege. General losses of the Soviet Union was 27 million people. Among them, 11 million military casualties, Army, Air Force, Navy, and 60 million civilians, ordinary people, farmers, workers, engineers, teachers, professors. For us, war was actually patriotic war. That is why it's known Great Patriotic War, because we defended not only our land, we defended our lives. My family personally contributed almost all my men, and both my grandfathers killed in actions, actually missed in actions during the Battle of River Dnieper in autumn 1943. This is one of the key battles during the war, and just to illustrate the scale of operation, Stalin, our supreme commander, awarded 2,250 officers and soldiers just during this 2 months battle. Never in the history of the Soviet Union, during one battle, men who managed to cross the river from left bank to the right bank under non-stop artillery shelling, small arms fire, bombardment. Only few managed to survive during this forced crossing operation to catch the head bridge on opposite bank.
Oh.
And that is why 2,250 men were awarded this top military order, Hero of the Soviet Union star.
I'm going to share a picture of a monument that I remember looking up. This is the exact spot where the German army was stopped, I believe, in early December 1941 in the Battle of Moscow, which is the
Yeah,
battle that really saved,
yeah.
the Russia's. This was a fight for national survival.
This is actually, excuse me, Todd. This is the 3 miles north from formal borders of current Moscow city. So from these anti-tank barriers, only 17 miles from these barriers, this monument, to the heart of Moscow, to Kremlin. 17 miles left, imagine.
17 miles, yes.
17 miles.
Right. From the Kremlin, the German army was stopped. I mean, that's how close the battle was. If people want to go to your website, Alexander, Americans want to go to your website and learn about your project, The Last Soldier in World War II, what would you want them to learn from it? What would you want them to get from this project?
Todd, yeah, I started this website project only a year and a half. Unfortunately, the English part of the project not so developed as it should be, due to the fact that I have so many commitments helping veterans in their home affairs, in veterans gatherings, planning trips, all this administrative stuff consumes very many hours of my free time. I'm still employed man. By the way, I currently work for American corporation Johnson & Johnson. They came to Russia in early 90s, and they have lots of branches across Russia. So I supervise the security business, or like security manager.
Well, your English is a lot better than my Russian.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And your English website, there's a lot of information there, I think, that people can kind of look at and enjoy. And Alexander, thank you for coming on and kind of sharing all this information that you've gathered about World War II and a little bit about your own service. I'd love to have you back. I'd love to have a Russian veteran come on if we could do it. I guess we would have to do it at like 7 a.m. here, but I would love to with a translator, kind of ask a Russian veteran about their experiences in World War II. If you ever want to set something like that up, I'd love to do it.
It's a good idea. The problem that almost all my veterans, they have sleep time right now. Yeah. So, and second problem, we have some COVID-19 restrictions. So we have no fully fledged lockdown as some European nations have, but right. We have partly lockdown. So it's advised to senior people stay at home to protect themselves.
Absolutely. Yes. And so maybe when things get better, we could arrange something like that. We could do it. I know it's midnight. We wouldn't be at midnight your time, but maybe we'd be able to arrange a time where it would be good for you and good for us.
Todd, may I have an option? Can I invite you to come one day to Russia to see these anti-tank barriers by your own eyes, to engage with World War II veterans? We have plenty of them so far, but of course, every week we have death toll increasing. Just yesterday, I buried a 100-year female veteran from the Marine Corps she defended Leningrad during all almost 900 days of siege.
Oh my!
Imagine, she
Did
lived
you
so long life. And
do you have an interview with her, or did she write her memoirs?
yes, I
Oh.
have. I managed last year to get recorded her interview for Norwegian TV. And of course, I have in my Russian part of the website, I have her war accounts as well.
You know, yeah, the siege of Leningrad, which was over 900 days, the Battle of Stalingrad, which was a turning point in the war. You know, the scale of these battles are just dwarf anything that occurred on the Western Front in World War II. And if any Americans want to read about what the siege of Leningrad was like and how anybody in that city survived those 900 days, I have no idea. But it was horrific. I would love to read or watch an interview with her. And I'd love to go to Moscow sometime. So in the summer, though, I'm not going in the winter.
Fortunately, last 10 years, the winter is getting milder and milder.
Milder
we have
and milder.
no such tough frost like it was during the Second World War, during German offensive operation in 41.
Jim Jameson, do you have a comment or a question?
Henry has a question. I wanted to bring that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Henry. Henry Shopke. He's our 13-year-old from Madison, Wisconsin. Hey, Henry, why don't you ask your question here?
Hi. I was just wondering what he was taught about Stalin when he was young.
What were you taught about Joseph Stalin when you were young, Alexander?
Because I was born in 65, so basically I missed to see Stalin when he was in power. He passed away in 53. So in our history books, he was described like a cruel man. He misused power. He due to his policy, he sent many people to gulag camps for their behavior, for their faults, either actual or false, as it turned out later. But in terms of military history, because he was supreme commander and he was a key decision maker, so we can't avoid mentioning his name or mentioning his contribution to the combined victory. So nevertheless, I received almost balanced picture about Stalin during those years of my childhood and teenagers.
Oh.
Later on, of course, I studied many other sources and books about his misuse of power, even some crimes. But in addition to those allegations, he was a great man because during 30 years of his reign, he inherited Russia as a farmer's country, and after his death, Russia became nuclear atomic country, very powerful in terms of armed forces, nuclear bombs, rockets, science, education. He created the best education system in the world, free medical care system, free housing for all layers of society. Lots of good things were done during his terms in the Kremlin.
I think that's a pretty thorough answer, Henry. You know, it was kind of a lot of anti-Stalin information when he was younger, and there's been some growing appreciation of what Stalin did at the price. I just can't imagine the price that was paid for that modernization of an agricultural country into an industrial superpower in the matter of decades, when it took Europe and, you know, the United States over a century to do it, is just stunning. But wonderful question, Henry. Thank you so much, Alexander, for joining us. And feel free to hang on, or you could go to sleep if you'd like, because it is after midnight.
Thank you, Todd.
I hope to see you again, and we'll be in touch.
Yes, it's a great privilege to be with you and all your respected audience.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Colonel. Take care.
Take care.
I want to introduce Ray Kaskey here. He is a sculptor, as I said, he was principal artist for the National World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C. And I was at an event where somebody said, I met a man who said, hey, I heard this guy, Ray Kaskey, speak about the panels, the 24 panels at the World War II Memorial, and his talk was phenomenal. You know, you should try and get him on your program. And I did, and I'm so glad that we're able to get you, Ray. You must. I thought it might take some, you know, some arm twisting, but you were happy to join us.
Excuse me, it's an honor to be here. I don't know how many people have been to the World War II Memorial. Anybody?
I think, yeah, if you've been to the World War II Memorial, why don't you raise your hand?
Well, I can't see the full.
Yes,
Now,
yes, most everybody.
I thought I would
has
just read this quick blurb that was written by the General Services Administration in their booklet on the World War II design competition, which talks about the bas-relief panels, just to give you the background. At the ceremonial entrance, which is 17th Street, are 24 bronze bas-relief panels, 5 feet 4 inches long by 1 foot 10 inches high, each inset into the balustrade, which is right there. 12 panels on each side. The panels depict the transformation of America from the beginning of the war until the end, proceeding from east to west in chronological order, down the ceremonial entrance to the Memorial Plaza. This is the end, the Memorial Plaza, and it's slightly sloping from the 17th Street side off to the right. The 12 panels on the north depict the Atlantic front. This is the north side. 12 on the south, the Pacific front. And here's my favorite sentence. The panels are isocephalic, which I'm sure you all know what that means.
First time I ever heard that word.
Which in Greek means that the heads of the principal figures line up horizontally. Well, that's not exactly true. It just means the heads are all equal, or in everyday language, all the figures are the same size in all 24 panels. And in other memorials around Washington, particularly the Navy Memorial, you see all different size people and big battleships, planes in the sky, blah, 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 and with no people in it. But I felt that the emphasis on the human element was the important thing here. So human scale is the visual unifying element. This is the north side.
Yes, and I'll show that this is where the panels are, right here on the main entrance from 17th Street. You hear that 12 on this side, 12 on this side, and this is the size of about a football field right in here.
Yeah, and this is the somewhat about 80% of the original rainbow pool, which was there as part of the Macmillan Plan back at the turn of the 19th century. And one of the reasons why this location was so controversial was that it was thought that this memorial was going to block the access between the Lincoln Memorial, the visual access between the Lincoln Memorial and the Washington Monument, which it doesn't, because this panel across the center has nothing sticking up beyond
Right.
head height. It definitely does not
Right.
block that axis.
And here's
Anyway.
another diagram of where the panels are. And you were brought on as principal artist. And I just want to let people know, although we're going to talk about the panels, you contributed tons of other artistic elements.
Well, all the
architectural.
bronze pieces were done by my studio, the design.
Down to these
And-
storm grates here, these wonderful star-shaped storm grates up here on the upper right, the base of the flagpole in the upper left, the rope motif, which is throughout.
Which is meant to symbolize the bonding of the nation, which happened during World War II
Right.
and not since.
And yeah, certainly we were, I think that's the reason why we have this program, The Greatest Generation Live. That World War II was such a moment of unity for our country in a way that we haven't had it since. And I love the story behind, you don't have to tell it, but I just want to let people know there's, every little part of this memorial has a story behind it. You were the one who contributed these bronze elements of the laurel wreath and the eagles. And there was a special problem with this victory laurel here on the right, this wreath that seems to be held up by eagles. You were able to kind of create this design and help solve the engineering problem of how much does that wreath weigh?
5,000 pounds. Yeah, I don't know, it's about 10 feet in diameter, but the laurel wreath is, to the victor goes the laurels, and Friedrich St. Florian, who's the design architect of the memorial and the winner of the competition, had intended this archway to honor the victory and the courage and bravery of the fighting man with the laurel wreath, and he had it kind of suspended from up above, and he wasn't satisfied with it because I thought it kind of looked like a chandelier, and he asked me to come up with a way to suspend it. And I had a memory of a church that I'd seen in Rome back in 1965 that had a little side chapel that had 4 angels supporting a wreath in the dome of the ceiling. And I thought, yeah, that I need something to animate this. And it isn't going to be angels, and it isn't going to be people, period. So what could it be? And the American eagle was the obvious symbol. It was one of those ideas I got right away, and everybody loved it. And everybody is a whole lot of people in this memorial. The American Battle Monuments Commission, the Commission of Fine Arts, the National Park Service, and the National Capital Park and Planning Commission, and a whole lot of other kibitzers.
Boy, I can't imagine the bureaucracy you had to deal with.
Yeah, anyway, this was one of the few items that just sailed right through. And then in terms of approvals, at any rate, but then the problem came, you got to make it, and you got to make it stand up. Anyway, long story short, let's move on.
I just think it's a fascinating story that each one of these elements, really, there's a story behind it. There's
Well, in that previous slide, you can see that the Lincoln Memorial is not blocked by anything. In fact, when this was taken, it looked like there was some construction going on the reflecting pool, because this is all built on the swamp, you realize, and the piles supporting the reflecting pool were giving way. So that's what happened. I mean, because the imagery here is the water from the reflecting pool appears to be falling on a waterfall right here. Anyway, it doesn't work when there's no water.
And this entranceway originally, Ray explained to me earlier that originally the idea was that they would have the seals and the emblems of every military branch of service involved in World War II. But then that idea was switched. Did you come up with the idea of the bas-relief panels depicting kind of real scenes in the war, or was that an idea that was given to you?
It developed midway through this 8-year slog, maybe in about the 6th year, because the Park Service had rejected a series of military flags flanking this for each service and seals and everything. And I don't remember their reasoning why. Just too many flags.
Right.
Get rid of them. And the individual service seals migrated to the 2 main flag poles, which are just out of sight here. So that opened this area up, and the architect Friedrich St. Florian said, well, we could do this or that, or we could do some scenes, some figures in there. And that's what I really like doing, is doing the figures. So
that's right, because these are the only, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but these are the only figures in the memorial. In other words, these are the only images of human beings in the memorial.
Everything else is symbolic animals like the eagles or the rope, and the wreath symbolizing the military and industrial strength of the United States during the war, the oak leaf wreath, and the wheat wreath symbolizing the agricultural might, which helped win the war and saved Europe after the war. And at any rate, so the problem was, we had 12 panels. The obvious division was the Atlantic Front and the Pacific Front. But then what to do? And that took quite a bit of going around with the American Battle Monuments Commission suggesting what they would be, and military historians. And what finally did it was, my studio is 15-minute drive from the National Archives, not the one symbolic building on the mall, but the actual working part of the building in College Park, Maryland. So we went there and combed through the Office of War Information photos, which are thousands, if not millions, of copyright-free photos. We had some general ideas, but as I said earlier, the theme was the transformation of America caused by the war. And part of that was women going into the military, women going into the workforce, Blacks going into the military in combat situations, and the growth, or getting out of the Depression, another transformation. So this included the home front as well, which was important if you're talking about the transformation of America, because I mean, we're still living through those changes brought about by the war, especially with our new vice president.
And, you know, I thought I would walk through, you know, I find it interesting that you were inspired by the frieze that wraps around the old pension building, which is now the National Building Museum, which is a frieze of Civil War procession, which in turn was inspired by the Parthenon in Athens, Greece, with its own kind of frieze of what appears to be some kind of military procession.
Maybe the Peloponnesian War? I don't know.
I'm not quite sure what it is.
Yeah, General Montgomery Meigs, who was the quartermaster of the Union Army, was the designer of what was then the pension building to disperse pensions to Civil War soldiers. And he was inspired by this, and that's what led to the frieze of the marching soldiers, all Northern soldiers, of course.
And I just love how, this, I mean, what we're
So
looking at right
this
here.
goes back to the isocephalic. The
Yes, and this
same
is
size figures that dominate the frame here and in the pension building. So that's what inspired me, basically.
what we're looking at here is in the Acropolis Museum in Athens, Greece. And this was done 2,500 years ago. And so the concept of kind of depicting a procession of events is a very old one, especially the concept of depicting warriors going into war and coming home from war is a very old one. And I just love how you kind of drew upon that rich history, that rich well of kind of culture to create your 24 panels. And what I thought I would do is to go through the panels. And if you had anything special to show to us about any insights, I know that you were inspired. Each panel is inspired by some photographs, usually several photographs, and the bas-relief panel is actually a composite of several photographs maybe that you had. So there are 12 dealing with the European War, 12 dealing with the Pacific War, and I thought we would start with the European War, with the Atlantic Theater. And this is the first one in the series, Lend-Lease.
Yeah, okay, fine. I mean, what made the final determination what to put in and what to leave out was made by Ambassador Hayden Williams, who was an ambassador at large under 4 or 5 presidents and a World War II veteran. And he was the head of the Battle Monuments Commission Site and Design Committee, who were our clients, as it were. And we presented everything first to them, to get their approval before the rest of the thing. At any rate, some of the home front stuff got dropped out, like victory gardens and scrap drives, as not being important enough. We needed more battle scenes, according to the military historians. But at any rate, yeah, this is the first. This is pre our involvement in the war, with the sort of the backdoor way to send material to Great Britain, the famous use your garden hose to put out your neighbor's fire that Roosevelt described it as. So this was just a dockside scene of material being shipped to Great Britain, with the headline. I'm not sure what that, I don't remember what that says, but obviously the war was ongoing at that point, although we weren't in it. Okay.
Yes, so this is depicting Lend-Lease to the Soviet Union and to Great Britain, which predated Pearl Harbor and really marked the entrance of the U.S. into the war as a belligerent power in a sense, but not quite at war yet. Women in the military is the second one.
Yeah, that I don't know why that was second, but there it is. And
we
course,
have
a lot of women were working as airline pilots, but this was in flying planes to drop-off points in the U.S., but a lot were overseas as well, and not just in clerical or nursing positions. So beyond being in the war, the next slide is of aircraft construction, which in order to keep this isocephalic idea of having the figures all the same size, had to make the floor of this be actually a scaffold up in, because one historian looked at it and said, that plane has no bottom.
Yeah. Those propellers turning would hit the floor. Right. Right.
So anyway, yeah. So the isocephalic idea and marching all in the same direction from right to left
Right.
breaks down because those other things were, the Parthenon and the Building Museum were simple compared to this.
Yes.
All that went on.
Think about that. The scale, if you're going to have all the figures be the same size,
Next to an airplane, you can't show
the whole airplane. Right. Battle of the Atlantic. This is another thing that predated Pearl Harbor. It's actually where I think Franklin Roosevelt thought the war would begin, in the Atlantic, because there was a shooting war taking place in 1940 between German U-boats and American merchant ships. This is part of the effort to get those Lend-Lease materials to Great Britain and to the Soviet Union. Just wonderful. And these are all inspired by photographs and then later models. We'll talk about them in a little bit, the models that you used.
And this is particularly meaningful to me because my father was a tail gunner in a B-17. And this is the air war in Europe with the B-17 faintly in the background. This panel kind of mixes up different time things and smashes them together. This is like the pre-mission getting ready, and this is the post-mission with the guy explaining how they dodged the fighter planes, the left hand and the right hand being airplanes. And the fact that they took dogs on, I'm not sure, it was probably a great comfort to have a dog in a situation like that. But this is where it gets complicated. You just can't have people marching along. So that idea wasn't exactly carried out in full.
Ray, I believe somebody told me at one point, and you could let us know if this is an urban legend or not. I believe somebody told me at one point that this man is urinating on the right.
I've heard that. It wasn't, I saw that image in a photograph at the archives, and it didn't occur to me that that's
what he was doing.
But yes, urinating on the tire was supposed to be
good luck.
Good luck, or give him hell. Or...
Did your dad talk much about the war? He was a B-17?
No, not at all.
No.
His plane was shot down when they were bombing Western German plants in Western France in 1943, but he had missed that flight. 10 out of the 11 people on it were killed in this farmer's field near Rennes, in a little village called Les Champs-Giroux. And while I was working on this, I got an email from a farmer right there in that town. And he said they were building a memorial to the place where this plane was shot down. And if I was Raymond Kaskey, senior's son, and I said, "Bill, yeah, I am." And he said, "Would you like to come to see this memorial we're building and help dedicate it?" And absolutely. So my wife and I and some other Americans who weren't closely related to the 10 people who had died, because apparently they didn't have any children, so they were more distant relations, but they came anyway. And some of them were buried in the nearest military cemetery, St. James Cemetery in Brittany. And I sent them a plaster copy of this panel, which they installed in the mayor's office. And I tried to explain in French what was going on, which they didn't get up and walk out, which I thought was progress. But anyway, 3 days, they treated us like royalty.
Oh,
and some of the people were still alive who had witnessed it come down, which is amazing that you got to talk to them, eyewitnesses. Okay, moving on.
Paratroopers.
Yes, this was a hard one to do, to keep the composition moving in the right direction, because apparently it's been pointed out to me they're even on the wrong side of the plane, or their drag lines are on the wrong side of them. I'm not sure which, but this was the kind of thing that was, you didn't have to do any invention. That's what it looked like. A lot of these other panels, you had to invent the composition using, and of course this is the D-Day panel. And when I saw the colonel's photo of the Moscow thing, they're not called tiger seats. I don't know what they're called, but
Warren, what are these obstacles called? Anti-tank obstacles? We have a D-Day veteran here with us today. What's the name for them? They're not tiger's teeth, or what are these?
What are they called? Those bars that were in the water.
Those obstacles on the beach there, Warren.
Obstacles on the beach.
Listen.
He's asking you.
I'm asking you, Warren.
Yeah, go ahead.
What are these obstacles on the beach called?
I really don't know. It's all I knew. They were obstacles, and I knew they had mines tied to them, and they were in there for high tide.
They had mines tied to them.
I see. Yeah, that would make sense.
Oh,
Because I hid behind one of those things
yeah.
a couple times.
Oh,
That's a pretty good picture. See the guys taking cover.
yep.
From those things. That's what I tried to do, because of the shell holes we're supposed to have there never arrived.
Right. Mm.
Well, the center part of this, I think, is the most accomplished bit of sculpting, I must say, and it was done by an assistant of mine named Aaron Sykes. I mean, there were no big battle scenes except the D-Day.
Show them where the mine was tied onto there. Can you show them where the mine was?
Yeah, show us where the mine was tied, Warren. Right.
How would I tell you that? It's tied in one of those damn
Come
things.
in.
I wouldn't know which one. See the poor guys.
Yeah, Mary, what are you thinking?
When I was laying there and I was just looking up and I seen it and I just run now. Which one it was, you can take the guess.
Jeez.
Well, now I'm glad to find that out.
I thought they had
Obviously, it's
mine
lower
tied.
tide. Well, this was taken. Okay. And the tanks in combat. Again, this kind of split the tank in two to focus on the middle, which were the soldiers taking shelter
Yes.
between the tanks.
And once again, Warren did that. I'm sorry, Ray. I'd love to turn to Warren. Warren, you hid behind tanks, right?
Oh, and sometimes, yeah, when they come up, sometimes I was glad to see them, and sometimes I was not very glad to see them.
I know that you stole food from them.
Pardon?
You stole some rations from them, didn't you?
I did that. Yes, I did. And they had a telephone in the back, and I used to thank those guys in that turtle for the rations.
That's right. So there was a telephone on the back of the tank, and you would steal their rations, lift it up, and say, "Thank you for the dinner," and hang up.
I say, hey, you guys hide this nutshell. I said, thanks for the rations. They had them tied on there with a wire cutter. We'd cut them off and take a case of it.
Warren, didn't you tell me? I'm sorry, Ray. I want to get back to you, but I remember Warren telling me a story, I believe, about didn't you hide under a tank?
Oh, that was during the Bulge.
The Battle of the Bulge.
Yeah, I stayed there all night.
Germans were surrounding you?
Well, the Germans were coming through, you know. And I got up to run, and I was so cold. My feet were so cold I couldn't hardly make them work. and I made it to this tank, and I slid under the tank. Tony Flossie covered my tracks up with snow so they couldn't see nothing, and I stayed there all night. And I could still hear the Germans walking around and running through with their tanks. And I laid there, and I took off my shoes and rubbed my feet, and I did do that. And another thing was good, I was out of the wind anyway. And I was staying there until the next day. The next day was, it was about, I'd say around noon time. Why, they came back up. Tony Flossie did that. And he come up and said, "Hey, Goss, you okay?" You know, and that's what happened.
Oh, boy. Boy, oh, boy. Carol Popchalk, thank you very much, Carol. They were called hedgehogs. Those barriers were called hedgehogs.
Is that what they're called?
I think they were nicknamed hedgehogs. Yeah, Carol, is that right?
I think those were the machines, the hedgehogs. Weren't the machines the hedgehogs that went through the hedges? Those were called the hedgehogs.
They were called hedgehogs too. Do you mean those the blades that were put on the tanks to go through the
hedges?
Yes.
the hedgerows? Yeah. But I think those barriers were called hedgehogs too. Carol?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I found.
Okay, that's what you found. All right. This is great. I'm going to go back to the panels here. Medics in the field, another wonderful one.
Yeah, we wanted to include, wounded and dying and being buried as
yeah.
And medics.
Hey, Todd.
Okay, this was the other panel with a known battle, the Bulge.
Yeah.
Tried to suggest that it was snowing by the weight on these trees branches hanging down and the clothing.
Wonderful. It's just because you imagine how difficult it is to depict cold weather, in a brass relief. I mean, but that's how you do it.
You were in a foxhole and the snow fell on you.
Yes, Warren, you were in the Battle of the Bulge.
Yes, I was.
Do you remember the cold?
The clothing problem was a great problem there. We didn't have enough warmth clothes, and at that time they come out with a boot they called shoe packs. And boy, were they good and warm. And the only people that ever had them was a replacement that come in. And when I learned on later, they were selling them to the black market, through the black market to anybody that'd buy them, the civilians. And I never got a pair, but I sure always wanted one. Never got one.
You never got one?
Never had a pair.
Hmm.
And the big thing is when you lay in that foxhole and all that snow, and everything's quiet, and it's a dark night, and your buddy's sleeping, it's your turn to watch, and you're just sticking your head up a little bit, looking around. And then them big pine branches would drop a big pile of snow right on your back or back on your head. My God, it scared you to death. You thought a German jumped on you.
Oh, my.
I tell you.
There was Warren brings up something really important about World War II, and I'll say this to Henry here, our 13-year-old from Wisconsin. There was a real problem getting warm clothing and good clothing to soldiers in the mountains of Italy and in Western Europe, in France and Belgium and Germany in 1944, the winter of 1944-45. There were guys who had frostbite. Frostbite was a big problem. Terrible problem. And a lot of the supplies were being sold, as you said, on the black market. So sad to say, but supply soldiers in the rear would sell them to civilians and, make a few bucks off of it. But it was denying people like you the equipment that you needed on the front lines. Amazing. So Ray, wonderful. I can't imagine the work it took. How many years did it take for you to design and then finally produce these panels?
We started in 2001. We were working on the first panel, the B-17 panel, when the Twin Towers were driven into.
Right.
So 1, 2, 3, about 3.5 years, but we were working on other things at the same time. So it's hard to say exactly how long it took. And this is the last panel on the Atlantic side with the Russians meet the Americans at the Elba,
right,
on the bridge. And this was pretty much taken from the photo, the iconic photo, except that we, for the sake of the composition, flipped it around because in the original photo, the Americans were coming from the left and meeting the Russians on the
Do
right.
you remember that one? Did you meet the Russians on the bridge?
No, never did.
Was that the question for me?
No, that was off mic question. And now here starts the Pacific half of the panels. And I love this image because there's so many Office of War Information photographs, Farm Security Administration photographs of the 1930s of families kind of huddled around the radio. And this is how I imagine many Americans learned about Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, well, this was the hardest one to come up with something. We went through a half a dozen different ways to portray this without showing planes bombing ships at Pearl Harbor. As I said, because we wanted to keep the heads equal, the focus on the human being, and in this case, the extended family, grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, and 3 children having Sunday dinner when they learned about the attack on Pearl Harbor, with a young man standing on the far right who's intensely interested because he's going to be the one drafted in the war. Anyway, that's, yeah, we were saved by the radio there. I think that was something to focus this on.
Right, focus the attention. I want to show this again. Here is the bas-relief of the Russians meeting the Americans at the Elbe. And as you were talking, I looked up that iconic photograph and I thought we could compare the photograph to this. And they really are quite different. Striking how different they are. Here is the photograph. Yeah. I think that was the inspiration for that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they had, from our perspective of keeping the action kind of moving, I just didn't want all those figures in the background, so we kind of pulled it out and just focused on the hands about to touch.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you needed to kind of stretch out the scene a bit.
And this, well, I have to go back and say, we learned how to do all this, not from the photos at the archives, which were the inspiration, but these were all posed by actual living models, including ourselves. And I learned that there are a very enthusiastic group of World War II reenactors who have been, some of them were actual vets who've been saving these uniforms and guns and clipboards from that era. It's just an amazing amount of stuff, who got in touch with me when we had to figure out, well, what's the next step? How do we actually rig this up to do what we want to do? using live models. And they offered their services for $10 an hour, which was a bargain for me. It's usually $25.
And
Yeah,
here are some of
this
the
fellow is named Brooks Tegler. He has a swing band, and he gathered all these people together, and they would come to my studio with pickup trucks full of stuff, chests full of uniforms, even down to matchbooks and Zippo lighters, and of course, cigarettes. They're in every, and he's a big smoker too, which is too bad for him. But
So
we would pose them either one at a time or in a group. And, you know, we would spend like a week shooting 6 different panels or 3 different panels, and then go back to sculpting them using, you know, hundreds of photos. And when we got those modeled in clay, ship them to the foundry, which is in Chester, Pennsylvania, in a building where they built World War II ships on the Delaware River.
And I love that you give this guy, at least you give him a cinder block to put his left foot on. I mean, that's a hard pose to hold for a while.
Yeah, we had more bizarre
I'm sure you did.
things than that.
I'm sure you did. And here's another one. I just love that you brought in reenactors, because those World War II reenactors are such experts. I mean, they know down to the the thread count in the tunics and in the jackets. I mean, they know details that a historian won't know.
I mean, he pointed out, if this nose cone on the B-17 is that year was blah, 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 and they didn't have that kind of.
That's right. That's right.
It was, you know,
they could see mismatches.
It really kept us from making really bad mistakes.
Did you have, so apart from the paratrooper scene, were there any other mistakes in these panels that you've heard from veterans who said, you got that slightly wrong?
No, none that I remember.
Well, that's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should be proud of that, because those mistakes are common.
They're going to be there forever.
And they're going to be there forever. Yeah, that's
at least until the World War II generation moves on.
That's right. When I say that it's when I make a mistake as a writer, I could always say, oh, well, we'll fix it in the next edition. But you can't say that. So let's get back here to some more panels. I love the enlistment also. This was to show blacks being sworn in. Those 3, I don't know if you can tell from the photo that they are black men. That was a big breakthrough. Another transformation that's still unfinished, but happening. And I also love, because it's just such a common scene. Everybody, 16 million men and women went through this process of, taking the oath, of getting the shots, of, getting the medical examination, getting their clothing issued. It's such a kind of a simple but profound moment in our veterans' lives, as is this embarkation. On the physicals, I think people were surprised to learn how unhealthy people were at that time, which was not good news. The Great Depression had taken a real toll on the American population. 10 years of depression, malnourishment. Yeah, when that first initial draft, the peacetime draft of 1940 started, I think it's huge numbers, maybe even half of those who were drafted had to be rejected because they couldn't pass the physical. Here's embarkation, shipbuilding.
Shipbuilding on the West Coast. Again, the 2 women on the far right with the welding helmets are black women. And this was, we put blacks in the picture where we found them in the archive photographs, except for the war bond parade. We put a black family in there just watching the parade. But this again I'm particularly proud of the way we did this because this ship is as big as the Empire State Building laying down on its side, and how you're going to squeeze that information in there. And you see the size of the propeller in relation to a human being.
Right.
I think that sends the message.
It sends the message. And this one was actually taken almost verbatim from a photograph, correct?
Yeah, except we put a woman driving the tractor and put a young man in uniform, either on leave or off, prior to being sent off. But the three other people, that's almost verbatim. And the relation of the way the tractor looked, and I forget what kind of tractor it was, but I mean, the agricultural might of the U.S. was embodied in this panel.
Yeah.
And the fact that women had to do the work when the men weren't around.
And Lend-Lease involved not only equipment and munitions, but also food, a lot of it. A lot of Russian Red Army soldiers ate American food.
Developed a taste for Spam, I gather.
That's right.
Another one, this was pretty much, at least this figure who was a black sailor, whom I don't think at that point they had any kind of combat role. They might have been cooks or something like that, but at any rate, they were there, and they were, when it counted, sitting on that torpedo rack. And this was the actual interior of the USS Torsk, which is in the Baltimore Harbor.
Yeah.
And I was able to photograph that. And the guide on duty was an electrician in the sub during World War II. So he guided me through.
So Ray, did you go down into the USS Torsk, anchored in Baltimore Harbor, actually take a picture and then use that picture as the basis for this?
Yeah, well, you couldn't get back far enough to get a picture of the side. This is sort of like the interior of a plane. You know, you can't.
You take a series of pictures, probably.
That's pretty much how I did it. But then this central image and what these two guys were doing with the mechanical levers, which I found out were to release the torpedoes in case the electrical release didn't work. And anyway, what was the question?
Well, no, I didn't have. I just found it interesting that you actually went down into a submarine and took pictures to help create this composition. And I imagine that, you know, the hardest thing for me, if I were to depict submarine warfare, I don't know what these guys are doing. I mean, you know, on the ground, in the air, you know, they're manning guns, they're shooting, they're crawling. You don't want a bunch of guys standing around in a submarine, so you have to give them something to do, right? When you depict them.
Well, I happened to meet the guy that wrote Run Silent, Run Deep, because across the partition in my studio is another artist who's actually a World War II veteran in the Navy, and he was doing something for the Naval Memorial at the same time, and I can't remember the author's name, but he was his consultant. So I grabbed him and asked him, you know, what are these two guys doing with this T-shaped thing, and what's this guy listening to?
Yeah.
And he was able to explain it, and you know, the other guys are just waiting to see what's going to happen. Right. Which I imagine would be the worst part. Doing something would give you a sense of agency, and then waiting around to get blown out of the water would be horrible.
Right.
And this is my favorite panel because, not so much because of the subject matter, but because it shouldn't have worked as a low relief sculpture, because this is the wing of a Corsair, a gull wing Corsair. and the wings are coming straight out at you, which would have been impossible in any other kind of plane to do. But the fact that you kind of see the top of it here and the underside of it there allowed you to sort of compress the thing without it looking not realistic. And then putting these figures under there created the illusion of, you know, there's space under that wing to get to. And again, this would be the deck of an aircraft carrier. And in the background, off in the distance, you can see other aircraft carriers. That's me as the deck master.
You're the deck master.
Yeah. And somebody said, I look like Elvis. Anyway. You know, I think as an artistic,
in his later years.
yeah, in his very late years. Anyway, as an artistic challenge, when we saw this photo in the archives, these figures weren't there like this, except for the deck master. It just never occurred to me that, yeah, how can you sculpt something that's coming straight out at you when it's supposed to be low relief? And I don't know, we were just naive enough to blast ahead and make it work.
And you made it work. Yeah. And I'm going to show people so they have a understanding of the gull wings that you're talking about. You know, how do you depict a wing that's going straight at you? The Corsair has a gull wing, so they're lifted up here. I'll show you a picture. So they're kind of bent upward, so you could get that perspective. They folded
up when they were just being stored on the deck.
Right, and the wings fold up. Just wonderful, and I love also the image of the ship in the background. Here, let me get back to it here.
So
yeah, Navy in action. Here we go. Okay, so yeah, showing the wrong thing. Hold on 1 minute. There we go. Okay, yeah. Amphibious landing.
In the Pacific, yeah, storming a beach. That one was kind of hard to make realistically with the beach at the bottom. I mean, it obviously is in too far probably
right
to the beach, but
yeah,
you wouldn't be able to tell the story. So some of this stuff is you have to take artistic license to tell the story, either stretch it out or compress it. Or
let me ask, Jack Watson is with us. He did an amphibious landing at Iwo Jima. How deep was the water when you landed? Were you landed right on the Jeep, Jack? Right on the beach.
How deep was the water?
Yeah.
About 3 feet.
3 feet deep?
A little bit above my knees.
Okay.
I was above my knees in the water.
Above your knees in the water.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be an inaccurate depiction then of just kind of splashing at, foot level. And Warren, Goss, when you landed at Utah Beach, it was way up to your chest, was it not?
Yeah, it was. But we didn't get all the way in it. We had a long way to run yet.
Okay.
Yeah, when I hit the beach over there, I just jumped on the side, of the side of
You went over this, right?
I didn't get down the ramp.
You didn't go down the ramp like these guys are going.
No.
You jumped over the side.
Because some of the guys never got off the ramp.
Right.
Yeah, well, we just had to take the elements of the landing craft and the beach on one side and smash them together to tell the story.
Right.
Otherwise, well, you wouldn't know what it was about.
Yeah.
And this was jungle warfare.
Yeah,
And
that's what I say that because I didn't see no palm trees. Though.
Yeah, Warren just said he didn't see any palm trees in France, but this is the Pacific here. So this would be
Oh.
like Bougainville or
yeah, this is
Long-
all tropical vegetation, courtesy of the botanical gardens at the foot of Capitol Hill.
There you go. Yeah.
Which Washington is a great place for doing things like this. It's, besides the Smithsonian and the archives and a whole lot of other federal sources of information, it
So
made
Ray,
it a lot easier.
so did you go to the botanical garden in Washington, D.C. and actually take pictures of plants
Yeah,
that
yeah,
would have been in these Pacific Islands?
yeah.
How
As-
wonderful. That's so
As
neat.
nearly as we could.
You did your research.
Oh, we did.
This fits
And
me.
you know, the burial, the field burial, I think was important to show the, you know, the consequences of
Yeah.
all this. And I thought that the helmet on the rifle as a temporary grave marker, it sort of became an iconic
Yeah.
image of,
Yeah. Yes, it did.
of what happens in war and the liberation of it. Some people read this as a liberation of a concentration camp, and it's a liberation of a Japanese POW camp. And I think, yeah,
That's another-
cigarettes played
Yeah.
a big.
Another hard thing to depict. And then VJ Day. This is wonderful.
Yeah, this kind of harks back to the first panel of the family at home. This is obviously a, you know, stateside and a street scene in front of a, not necessarily a New York building. I mean, it hard to compete with the sailor kissing the girl in Times Square. Didn't want to go there, but I thought the kissing the girl over the mailbox, you know, the mailboxes still look like that.
Yep.
Where is it?
It's behind the thing. And that's my wife, who's sitting right here, right there, with listening to the radio.
So your
And,
wife, this is your wife right here?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And
I thought-
maybe over on the other side of that column, which I can't see right now, but, and this is on the far right, grandfather is a fellow named Leo Herrera, who was a World War II veteran and sculptor we shared studio space. He died about 6 months ago in his 90s.
And he's depicted here on the left-hand side?
Yeah. Well, you know, hearing aids
Yeah.
weren't so great, and still aren't so great.
How wonderful.
Anyway,
And
he tried
that's
to
the,
get the whole family from young kids, you know, to grandfather. So that's it.
Ray, thank you so much for walking us through those 24 panels. And thank you for the, you know, the work and care that you put into it. I think most people here on this Zoom call have seen the panels, and it's just so, it's a thrill for me to meet the person who created them. And to know that you're from Pittsburgh, that's a real plus.
And I did the statue of Art Rooney. So
Yes. Thank you for mentioning that. Yes, you did the statue of Art Rooney outside of Heinz Field. So next time anybody sees that statue, we'll think of you. Ray, would love to have you back anytime if you want to join us. Talk about your father's service, what you know of it, if you'd like. Certainly, Warren, I'm going to make you keep coming back because we barely got to have you talk at all. And I know I twisted Jack Watson's arm. He's agreed to be a guest. Gene Klebingott, you're going to be a guest at some point. I know Julia Parsons will be also. If anybody has any questions, I know we're past 5:30 already, But if anybody has any questions, yeah, okay. So I hope to see you all tomorrow night at 7 p.m. for our happy hour. We will be, actually at 6 p.m. to show Vietnam in HD. And then at 7 p.m. we'll have a conversation with Vietnam veterans and with Marines. All right, for the good of the order, unless anybody else has anything to add, we will close the meeting. You could go watch the Steeler game. I'll see you, Bert Kennedy. I'll see you, Gene. Take care, Carol. Thank you, Ray, so much. Thank you, Warren and Mary. I want to see Warren and Mary dance to our opening theme song next time. That's what I want to see. All right. Hold on. What'd you say, Warren?
Ray, I just want to tell you, it was a great honor to meet you. I don't know.
Been my pleasure.
We need
Nice
more
meeting you
people
too.
like you.
Thank you.
That was a beautiful story.
Beautiful, beautiful story.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Ray. I appreciate it. You've educated us all.
Okay.
All right.
And another thing, Todd.
Thanks a lot.
I was glad
Bye-bye.
to hear that guy.
Bye-bye.
Todd,
Yes.
I was really honored to hear that guy from Russia too. You know, just to hear his story. It was good.
Absolutely.
I know. I remember I was looking forward to meet the Russians, but I never did.
You never did.
Never did. And I always thought, boy, when I meet those Russians, because I knew they were coming from one end and we were from the other end. And they were going to shake their hand or do something. But I never got there. See, I just got to Frankfurt.
I just remember reading that the Russian soldiers would say to each other, boy, I hope the Americans made a lot of miles today. And then the American soldiers would say, boy, I hope the Russian soldiers made a lot of miles today,
Yeah.
you know, so that the war would be over. Boy. All right. Good night, everybody. Have a good rest of your
night.
Sunday. We'll see ya.
You.